Today I'm sharing 4 of my favorite Mediterranean recipes. They're simple, wholesome, and delicious. These dishes are perfect for easy dinners, healthy lunches, or anytime you want to bring a taste of the Mediterranean to your table. And first up, we have my pistachio pesto pasta. Now let's get into it. I'm going to serve mine with some penne pasta, but you can use whatever pasta you prefer. And for the cheese, I'm using a blend of Pecorino Romano and Parmigiano Reggiano, and you definitely want to make sure to grate your own cheese for your pesto. And at the heart of your sauce is the basil, so you want to make sure to do some really fresh basil. You want to look for bright green, fragrant leaves, and avoid any with black spots. And I'm using about 4 cups of loosely packed basil. Our pasta water is boiling, so go ahead and add a generous amount of salt along with the penne pasta. Give that a stir and let it cook until al dente. To make the process super easy, I'm using a food processor. You can also use a blender, and I'm adding in garlic, my fresh basil, and some lemon zest. And the ingredient that really surprised me when my son told me were pistachios. You use them in place of the pine nuts, and they're a little less bitter than the pine nuts and give this pesto a smoother, more balanced flavor. I'm also adding in my cheese, and you'll blend that until smooth. And then this little random trick I learned from thekitchen.com, she adds in an ice cube. I guess she learned it from an Italian chef, and it keeps the sauce bright green. And then you'll slowly add in your olive oil while everything is still blending, and remove the cover, scrape down the sides, and then you'll blend again until it reaches the consistency that you like. I like mine with a little body, but blend until you're happy. Take your pasta off the heat and then just add in all of the pesto. I used it all. And you'll just mix it together, and then we have our reserved pasta water, which is going to give you that creamy sauce without having to add in heavy cream or lots of butter, and use as little or as much as you want. I used about 3/4 cups of my pasta water, but I like to save a little bit for if I need to reheat it later. I just add that in to reheat it, and it gets nice and creamy again. I find that it is best served fresh, so go ahead and pack a big plate of pasta for you, and then I like to top it with some Pecorino Romano or some Parmigiano Reggiano. Next up, we've got our sheet pan chicken kebabs that come together so quickly, no grill and no skewers needed, served with a delicious white sauce. For this recipe, I am using a combination of chicken breast and chicken thighs, and I'm cutting it into large chunks because I am going to grind my own meat. I chose to grind my own chicken using my KitchenAid meat grinder attachment, but you can also use a food processor. I just find that grinding it fresh gives me full control over the texture, which is especially important when you're shaping kebabs so that they don't fall apart. Plus, I know exactly what cuts I'm using, so there's no mystery meat here. And I'm just roughly chopping 1 large white onion. I'm using white onion because it's milder and it blends better into the meat mixture. I'm also roughly chopping 1 red bell pepper. Go ahead and add your red peppers and your onions to your food processor, and I'm also adding in some whole garlic cloves, some parsley, cilantro, dill, and a little olive oil. And blend on high until everything is fully combined. I'm using a cheesecloth to just drain all the moisture out of the mixture, but you can also use a sieve if that's all you have. Make sure to reserve that juice because it's liquid gold, and we're going to use that for our salad and our sauce. Add the drained vegetable mixture to your meat mixture, and for the seasonings I've got cumin, smoked paprika, turmeric, garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper, as well as a little bit of olive oil. Combine well until all of the seasonings and the veggie mixture is really worked into the meat. And And I'm just adding a little bit of olive oil to my sheet pan so that my parchment paper will stick without moving, so it's easier when I'm trying to shape my kebabs. Add in the meat mixture and you're gonna shape it into a square. You want it to be about 1.25 inches in thickness. And just work along all the sides until it's all even. And I'm gonna use my bench scraper to just cut them into kebab shapes. You want to cut them evenly, so maybe you can measure them beforehand by doing some like gentle cuts without cutting all the way through, just to make sure that they're all even and they cook evenly. Mine were about 1.5 inches in thickness, I would say. And once you've got your individual pieces, I just created a little bit of space in between them and then finished shaping them with my fingers. My kids and husband love roasted tomatoes, so I'm just adding in some roughly chopped tomatoes. You can also do bell peppers. While the kebabs are cooking in the oven, we're gonna make our sides, and I'm making an arugula salad with some thinly sliced white onion. I'm also roughly chopping some parsley, and once that's done, we're gonna go ahead and top it with some cherry tomatoes that I just sliced in half. You can use regular tomatoes if that's what you have. And the dressing is super simple. It's just some olive oil, sumac, salt, and pepper. And then the secret ingredient is that reserved vegetable juice. I did about 1.5 tablespoons, but you can taste it and decide if you want more. I like to top my kebabs with a herby tahini sauce that's made with some tahini, the vegetable juice, fresh lemon juice, Greek yogurt, garlic powder, and some freshly grated garlic. And then I add in some chopped cilantro and chopped dill. And they're done. Use a meat thermometer to just make sure that the internal temperature is just right. Usually I like to plate it over some lavash bread, and I just put the kebabs on top so people can make their own sandwiches. And then I just place the roasted vegetables alongside the tomatoes or the red peppers, whatever you used. And then I top it with some of that reserved vegetable juice. So juicy and delicious, and such a simple recipe, which is so easy to make. No grill needed, no skewers. And the way I build my sandwich is the kebab over the bread, and then I take some of the salad and lots of sauce, of course. Next up is a spinach, tomato, and feta pie. It comes together so quickly and it's so delicious. You're gonna start off by slicing half of your onion, and I'm using a white onion, but you could also use yellow onion. This is just what I had on hand. And I'm using 1/3 cup of sun-dried tomatoes. I wouldn't replace this with regular tomatoes because it'll make the pastry soggy. And I'm using about 1.5 tablespoons of the oil from the sun-dried tomatoes, and I'm gonna use that to saute my onions. Saute your onions on medium heat until they're softened and translucent, about 3 to 4 minutes, and then you'll go ahead and add in your baby spinach that has been washed. Once you've cooked your spinach and it has wilted down and some of the moisture has been released, I like to run it through a cheesecloth just to get out that excess moisture. And I like to add a combination of fresh herbs. Sometimes it's whatever I have on hand, so I add some fresh parsley. I'm also going to add in some fresh dill. I think that's the one that I would say is a non-negotiable unless you hate it. And I'm also adding in some fresh chives. And once we've done the prep, our filling comes together super easy. You've got your cooked spinach and onions. I'm adding in my herbs, sun-dried tomatoes. I'm also adding in some feta, and then we're gonna add 2 eggs just to bind the mixture. For the seasoning, I've got some onion powder, garlic powder, oregano, and just a pinch of salt since the feta is pretty salty. I'm using a 9-inch spring foam pan just so that it's easy to remove at the end, and just adding in some olive oil along the bottom and the sides. You can find phyllo dough in the freezer section of the supermarket. You'll just want to thaw it in the fridge and then leave it on the counter for an hour before you use it. And you'll just take one sheet and just place it on the bottom and make sure there's some overlap on the sides, because that's what's going to create that nice pretty top at the end. And very important is to make sure to add olive oil in between each layer. And you'll just repeat this process until you've got 6 layers of phyllo dough, each with a bit of olive oil in between. Final layer, make sure to add in olive oil on the sides and all across the bottom, and you're ready to put in your filling. And I like to fill it up, and then I use like a flat spatula to just go ahead and spread it evenly across. And the last step is super easy. You'll just take the extra phyllo that's hanging off of the sides and then just kind of bring them in and bunch them towards the middle. And then once that's all done, you're just gonna take some olive oil and brush some olive oil all across the top. And you'll bake this in your preheated oven for about 25 to 30 minutes or until nice and golden brown on top. Let it rest for about 10 minutes and then remove it from the spring foam pan and you're ready to garnish. I like to garnish with a little bit of chives, but you can also do parsley. And once you dig in, it is super crispy. It's just so delicious with the layers of feta and spinach, and the sun-dried tomatoes give it a little tang as if you had added in some lemon. It's so great. And I like to serve mine with an arugula salad, and I just make a quick dressing with some mustard, olive oil, salt, pepper, and lemon, and it goes so well with this. Last but definitely not least, we have my Mediterranean orzo that's packed with flavor, olives, tomatoes, topped with feta, served with some grilled shrimp. I'm going to start off by making a super easy basil dressing that you can use on vegetables, on top of pasta, salads, and it starts off with just 1 cup of fresh basil. You'll also add in some freshly grated garlic along with some really good olive oil. I'm using a Sicilian olive oil and the juice of 1 whole lemon. I'm adding in half a teaspoon of salt, but you can start with a 1/4 teaspoon and then just salt to taste from there. And I'm also adding in some Mediterranean oregano and black pepper. Combine for about a minute or until you reach a nice and smooth consistency, and taste for salt and pepper and adjust. Perfect. I'm using a variety of colors for my cherry tomatoes. The yellow ones are just sweeter, so it brings a different taste profile, and then the colors are so beautiful when you add them to the dish. And I'm just slicing them in half, and then you'll set them aside. And when I think Mediterranean, I definitely think olives, and Castelvetrano are one of my favorite olives. And you're just gonna take them and slice them thinly along with some Kalamata olives. And you can go ahead and add your olives to the same bowl as the tomatoes and set that aside. Add some olive oil to a large pan on medium heat and add in your crushed garlic and saute that for 30 seconds to a minute or until it's nice and aromatic. Add in your orzo and just give that a stir for about 30 seconds. You don't want the orzo to get any color, you want it to remain pale. And then you'll go ahead and add in the chicken stock. I'm using Better Than Bouillon, the low sodium chicken version that I just diluted with some water. And then you're going to add in your seasonings. I've got some paprika, some Mediterranean oregano, some salt, and some pepper. And you'll just cover it and let it simmer for 8 to 10 minutes or until al dente. And while that's cooking, I'm just going to prepare my shrimp. And this is totally optional, but I love to serve this with some sort of protein. And it's so quick to make because you can just make it while the orzo is cooking. And I'm adding some smoked paprika, onion powder, garlic powder, a little salt, and a little pepper. I'm putting them on skewers because I'm going to use my grill pan to grill them, or if it's warm outside and you have a grill, you can use a regular grill. If you are going that route, I would just soak the skewers so they don't burn, but they typically are okay when you're just using a grill pan. Add some olive oil to your grill pan on medium-high heat, and I'm going to add in the shrimp and grill them for about 1.5 minutes per side. My shrimp were a little thick, so they took a little longer. And then once that 1.5 minutes is done, you'll just flip them and repeat on the other side. Once I flipped it, I just basted it with some of that delicious basil dressing we made earlier, and then set that aside while we finish up our orzo. The orzo is ready and has absorbed all of the liquid, and I'm just going to add in the tomatoes and our olives and give that a little swirl. And I don't want to break up the tomatoes. I want them to kind of remain intact. And then I'm going to go ahead and top it off with some feta cheese, and I'm going to reserve some feta cheese to top it once I plate. And I just let everything come together for about 1 minute or 1.5 minutes on low heat, and then I like to top it with some freshly chopped basil. In under 30 minutes, it's ready. Go ahead and plate it, and I like to top it with some of that basil dressing. And then I put some more feta cheese, and you can totally add some more basil if that's what you want, and you're ready to dig in.